Frances Harris tested 25 women by pretending to be broke, and all of them failed. Then he met Sandra, a struggling waitress who paid for his dinner without hesitation, and seemed to love him for who he was, not his money. But Francis had no idea that his ex-wife Jennifer had hired Sandra to pass every test, make him fall in love, and then destroy him in a brutal divorce that would take everything he had left. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far our stories reach and how they resonate across the globe. Francis Harris was a billionaire, but nobody knew it when they looked at him. He drove a beat-up 2003 Honda Civic with rust on the doors. He wore jeans from Goodwill with stains on the knees. He lived in a tiny apartment that smelled like the Chinese restaurant downstairs. At least, that's what his dates saw. His real life was different. Francis actually owned a $50 million real estate empire. He lived in a penthouse with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. His real car was a Mercedes that cost more than most people's houses. But after his divorce, Francis had learned an important lesson. Women couldn't be trusted with the truth about his money. His ex-wife Jennifer had taken $25 million in the divorce. She'd also taken his ability to trust anyone. So Francis created a test. He would pretend to be poor on every first date. He'd wear cheap clothes, drive a terrible car, and at the end of dinner, his credit card would decline. Then he'd watch what happened. In 18 months, Francis had tested 25 women. All of them failed. Some women made excuses and left before dessert. Some never called him back. One woman actually told him he was wasting her time and walked out of the restaurant. Francis told himself he was being smart. He was protecting himself. He was making sure no one would ever use him for his money again. Then he matched with Sandra Mitchell on a dating app. Sandra was 28 years old and worked as a waitress at Murphy's Diner. Her profile picture showed her in a uniform, holding a coffee pot. She wasn't wearing makeup. She wasn't posing in front of expensive cars or vacation spots. She looked normal. Tired, but normal. When Francis suggested they meet at Murphy's Diner for their first date, Sandra said yes immediately. She said she worked there and could meet him during her break. Francis liked that. She wasn't asking him to take her somewhere expensive. She was being practical. Francis showed up at the diner, wearing his Goodwill outfit. He parked the Honda 3 blocks away. When he walked inside, Sandra was carrying plates to a table of truckers. She saw him, smiled, and waved him toward a booth. "You must be Francis," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Sorry, I only have 30 minutes. We're short-staffed today." Sandra ordered a salad because she said she ate at the diner 6 days a week and was sick of everything. Francis ordered a burger. While they waited for food, Sandra asked about his daughter Emma. Francis had mentioned Emma in his messages because he wanted to see how women reacted to finding out he was a single father. Most women disappeared when they heard he had a kid. Sandra had just asked what Emma liked to do. Now Sandra listened while Francis talked about Emma's dinosaur obsession and her fear of thunderstorms. Then Sandra pulled out her phone and showed him a picture of a teenage boy in a hospital bed. "This is my little brother, Danny," Sandra said. "He's 15. He has leukemia. The treatment is really expensive, so that's why I work doubles most days. Our parents died when I was 19, so it's just us now." Francis felt sorry for her. Sandra looked genuinely sad when she talked about her brother. Her eyes got wet. Her voice got quiet. This woman was really struggling, and she wasn't afraid to tell him about it. Their food arrived. Sandra ate quickly and checked her watch twice. She was really on a break from work. This wasn't some elaborate date. This was a woman stealing 30 minutes from her shift to meet him. "So, what do you do?" Sandra asked. Francis had been waiting for this question. This was the moment when most women started calculating whether he was worth their time. "I'm between jobs right now," Francis said. "I was working in property management, but the company downsized. I'm looking for work, but it's tough out there." Sandra just nodded. "Yeah, my friend lost her job last month. It took her forever to find something new, and it pays way less. The economy sucks right now." She didn't ask how he was paying his bills. She didn't ask if he had savings. She didn't suddenly remember she had somewhere else to be. She just sympathized and kept eating her salad. They talked for another 10 minutes about movies and weather and the terrible country music on the diner's jukebox. Then Sandra's phone alarm went off. "I have to get back to work," she said. "But this was really nice, Francis. Can we do it again?" "I'd like that," Francis said. "Are you free Thursday night?" "Yes. There's an Italian place near where I live. Nothing fancy, but the pasta is good." When the check came, Francis pulled out his prepaid card. He'd loaded exactly $8 onto it. The bill was $12.43. The waitress came back and said the card declined. Francis pretended to be confused and embarrassed. He pulled out his wallet and started going through it slowly. "That's so weird," he said. "I just checked the balance this morning. I can use this other card, but I'm not sure if there's enough on it. I had to pay my electric bill yesterday and—" Sandra put her hand on his arm. "Francis, stop. I've got this." "No, you can't pay." "That's not. I work here. I get a discount." Sandra pulled cash from her apron pocket. It was her tip money from that morning. She handed it to the waitress. "Put on my tab, and add a slice of apple pie to go. He's taking it home." Francis stared at her. 25 women had failed this exact test. Some got angry. Some made excuses. Some accused him of wasting their time. But Sandra had just paid with her tip money, without thinking twice. "I'll pay you back," Francis said. Sandra waved him off. "It's $12. Don't worry about it." She stood up and smiled at him. "Text me about Thursday, okay? I really want to see you again." Then she walked back to the kitchen, leaving Francis sitting alone with the to-go container of apple pie and a strange feeling in his chest. For the first time in 18 months, Francis thought maybe he'd found someone real. What Francis didn't know was that Sandra Mitchell wasn't real at all. Her real name was Claire Santos, and she was an actress, a broke, desperate actress who'd been hired by Jennifer Harris to do the performance of her lifetime. Jennifer had told Claire everything about Francis's tests: the declined credit card, the cheap clothes, the beat-up car. Jennifer had studied her ex-husband for years, and she knew exactly what kind of woman he was looking for. So she created that woman. She'd given Claire a backstory about a dying brother. She'd positioned Claire at the diner Francis liked to use for first dates. She'd coached Claire on exactly what to say and how to act. And most importantly, she'd told Claire to pay for that first dinner without hesitation. Jennifer was paying Claire $10,000 a month to make Francis fall in love. And if Claire could get Francis to marry her, Jennifer would pay her $500,000 as a bonus. Then, after the divorce, Claire would split her settlement with Jennifer 50-50. It was the perfect revenge. Jennifer would use Francis's own paranoia against him. She would give him exactly what he was looking for, and then she would take everything he had left. Claire Santos needed the money desperately. Her rent was 3 months overdue. She hadn't booked an acting job in 2 years. She was about to be evicted. So when Jennifer offered her $10,000 a month to date a rich man and pretend to be poor, Claire said yes without thinking about the consequences. But as Claire walked back to the kitchen that day, she felt something unexpected. She felt guilty. Francis had seemed like a nice guy, a lonely guy, a guy who was clearly damaged by his divorce, just like she was damaged by her failed career, and her dead parents, and her empty bank account. Claire told herself it didn't matter. This was just a job. She'd play the role, take the money, and get her life back on track. She'd done worse things for less money. But that guilt didn't go away. It just got stronger. Francis saw Sandra 4 more times over the next 3 weeks. They went to the Italian restaurant, where Sandra ordered the second cheapest thing on the menu, and Francis saw her eyes flick to the prices before she decided. They walked through a park and sat by a fountain. They went to a free concert where a local band played old rock songs. Sandra never complained about the cheap dates. She never hinted that she wanted to go somewhere nicer. She just seemed happy to spend time with him. On their 5th date, Francis brought Emma. He never introduced Emma to anyone he was dating before. It felt too serious. But Sandra had asked about Emma so many times, and she seemed genuinely interested, so Francis decided to risk it. They went to the Children's Museum. Emma took to Sandra immediately. Sandra didn't talk down to Emma like most adults did. When Emma explained her entire dinosaur collection in excruciating detail, Sandra listened and asked real questions. When Emma wanted to see the space exhibit 3 times in a row, Sandra didn't complain. After the museum, they got ice cream. Emma ordered chocolate with gummy bears. Sandra ordered vanilla with sprinkles. Francis didn't order anything because he was playing his role as the broke guy who couldn't afford extras. "Daddy, why didn't you get ice cream?" Emma asked. "I'm not hungry, sweetheart." Sandra looked at Francis across the table. She understood. She thought he couldn't afford it, and she didn't make a big deal about it. She just changed the subject and started talking to Emma about space. Later, after they dropped Sandra off at her apartment building, a run-down place in a bad part of town, Emma was quiet in the back seat. "Do you like Sandra, Daddy?" "I do." "Do you like her?" "She's really nice. And she's pretty. But, Daddy," she has sad eyes, "like you do sometimes." Francis looked at his daughter in the rear-view mirror. Emma was 7 years old, and she was absolutely right. Sandra did have sad eyes, the kind that came from carrying too much weight for too long. Over the next 2 weeks, Francis fell deeper in love with Sandra. They cooked dinner together at his fake apartment. They watched movies. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Sandra told him about growing up poor, about losing her parents in a car accident, about working 3 jobs to keep her brother alive. Francis told her about his divorce, about his fear that no one would ever love him for who he really was, about the loneliness that ate at him every night. But Francis started noticing small things that didn't add up. Sandra always wore the same cardigan. It was old and had been mended at the elbow. But when Francis looked closely, he realized the fabric was expensive. It was a designer cardigan that had been made to look old. Why would a struggling waitress own something like that? Sandra's shoes were worn down at the heels, but the stitching was perfect. They were designer shoes that had been distressed to look cheap. One night, Sandra's purse fell open and Francis saw a prescription bottle inside. The label showed a pharmacy that was 30 miles away in a wealthy neighborhood. Why would someone who could barely afford rent drive 30 miles for prescriptions? Francis told himself he was being paranoid. His ex-wife had made him suspicious of everyone. He was seeing problems where there weren't any. But the doubts kept growing. The breaking point came when Francis offered to visit Sandra's brother in the hospital. He wanted to meet Danny. He wanted to show Sandra that he was serious about being part of her life. Francis went to the hospital Sandra had mentioned. He asked for Danny Mitchell at the front desk. "We don't have a patient by that name." The receptionist said, "Are you sure?" "He's 15 years old. Leukemia patient." The receptionist checked her computer again. "No Danny Mitchell in our system. Maybe he's at a different hospital." Francis walked back to his car feeling sick. He sat in the Honda for 20 minutes, staring at his phone. Then he called Marcus, the head of a security team. "I need you to run a full background check," Francis said, "on Sandra Mitchell. I need to know everything about her." Marcus called back 2 days later and said they needed to meet in person. They met at a coffee shop downtown. Marcus looked worried, which made Francis nervous. Marcus was a former cop who didn't worry easily. "Sandra Mitchell doesn't exist," Marcus said. He slid a folder across the table. "I mean, she exists now. She has an ID and a social security number and an apartment lease. But 5 years ago, there's nothing. No credit history, no employment records, no school transcripts." Sandra Mitchell was created in 2021. Francis felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "What do you mean, created?" "Her real name is Claire Santos. She's 31 years old, not 28. She's an actress. She did some theater in New York, a few commercials, some dinner theater. Nothing big. She stopped performing 2 years ago." Marcus opened the folder. Inside were photos of Sandra, Claire, on stage in different productions. She looked different in the photos. More polished, more confident, more like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "There's more," Marcus said. "Claire Santos receives a monthly payment of $10,000. It's been coming in since 2 weeks before you matched with her on that dating app." "Who's paying her?" Marcus pulled out another document. "The money is routed through offshore accounts. but I traced it. It originates from an account in the Cayman Islands. An account opened by Jennifer Harris. Francis felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Jennifer is paying Sandra to date me? Not just to date you. Marcus pulled out a contract. It was dense legal language. But Francis understood enough. Claire was being paid to establish a romantic relationship with Francis, gain his trust, and maintain the relationship until marriage occurred. She would get a $500,000 bonus if Francis proposed, another $1 million if they got married, and if they divorced, Claire would split her settlement with Jennifer 50-50. Francis stared at the contract. He saw Jennifer's signature at the bottom, the same signature that had been on their divorce papers, the same signature that had taken $25 million from him. There's no brother, Marcus said quietly. There never was. The kid in the photo is a stock image you can buy online for $20. But I saw her cry when she talked about him, Francis said. His voice sounded hollow, even to himself. She's an actress, Marcus said. A good one. Marcus explained that Claire met with Jennifer every Tuesday at a cafe near Claire's apartment. Jennifer had been coaching Claire the whole time, telling her what to say, how to act, what Francis would respond to. Jennifer knew all of Francis's weaknesses because she'd been married to him for 8 years. She knew about his tests. She knew about his paranoia. She knew exactly what kind of woman would make him fall in love. So she created that woman. Francis sat in the coffee shop for a long time after Marcus left. He looked at the photos of Claire on stage. He looked at the contract with Jennifer's signature. He thought about the way Claire had paid for that first dinner, the way she'd played with Emma at the museum, the way she'd looked at him when she said she was falling in love with him. All of it had been a lie. All of it had been a performance. He'd been testing women for 18 months, trying to find someone genuine. And the only woman who'd passed his test was an actress who'd been paid to study for them. Francis felt something break inside him, not his heart, something deeper, his ability to trust his own judgment. If he couldn't tell the difference between real love and a performance, then what was the point of anything? But then Francis had another thought. If Jennifer and Claire thought they'd won, maybe he could use that. Maybe he could turn this around. Maybe he could give them both what they deserved. Francis called Sandra's number. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice warm and normal. "I know this is going to sound weird, but I need to talk to you about something important. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Is everything okay?" Sandra sounded concerned. Perfect concerned. An actress is concerned. "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. Can you come to my place Saturday night? I'll make dinner. I just need to tell you something in person." "Of course. I'll be there." Francis hung up. He had 3 days to decide what he was going to do. 3 days to figure out if he wanted revenge or if he wanted something else entirely. If you're still watching, this story has you. You're curious about what comes next. Most people enjoy stories like this and disappear without subscribing. But if this one truly matters to you, take a moment to hit subscribe. Otherwise, you might miss how the story ends, and all the others still waiting to be told. Francis spent the next 3 days preparing for Saturday night. He arranged for Emma to stay with her grandmother. He had his real penthouse cleaned and ready. He bought expensive wine and good steaks. He was going to show Sandra, Claire, who he really was. And then he was going to watch what she did with that information. Francis still didn't know what he wanted to happen. Part of him wanted to expose Claire as a fraud and throw her out. Part of him wanted to call the police and have both her and Jennifer arrested for fraud. But another part of him, a part he didn't want to admit existed, wondered if any of it had been real. If maybe Claire had actually fallen for him somewhere along the way, even if it started as an act. Saturday night came. Francis stood in his real penthouse looking out at the city lights. The place was huge, 4,000 square feet with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that cost more than most people made in a year. This was his real life, the life he'd been hiding from everyone. The doorbell rang at 7 o'clock. Francis opened the door. Sandra stood there in her blue dress, the same one she'd worn on their second date. She was holding a bottle of cheap wine and smiling. "Hey," she said, "I brought wine." I know it's not fancy, but... She stopped talking. Her eyes had moved past Francis to the apartment behind him. Her face went pale. Whose place is this? She asked quietly. Mine, Francis said. Come in. Sandra walked inside slowly. She looked around at the grand piano and the modern art, and the chandelier that cost more than a car. She looked completely shocked. Either she was an even better actress than Francis thought, or she genuinely hadn't known about his money. I don't understand, she said. Francis closed the door. My name is Francis Harris. I own Harris Property Group. We develop commercial real estate all over the country. I'm worth about $50 million. Sandra's mouth opened and closed. She looked like she might faint. But you, the car, the apartment, the declined credit card. All fake, Francis said. I was testing you. I've been testing every woman I date since my divorce. My ex-wife took half my money, and I swore I'd never let anyone use me like that again. So I pretended to be poor to see who would stick around when they thought I had nothing. Sandra sat down heavily on the couch. She was still holding the cheap wine. You were testing me, she repeated. Yes. For 2 months you lied to me. Yes. Sandra looked up at him. Her eyes were wet. And what did I do? Did I pass your test, Francis? Did I prove I wasn't a gold digger? You passed every test, Francis said. You were perfect. Too perfect. He pulled out the folder Marcus had given him and set it on the coffee table. Your name isn't Sandra Mitchell. It's Claire Santos. You're an actress from New York. You've been paid $10,000 a month for the last 3 months by my ex-wife Jennifer to pretend to fall in love with me. Sandra, Claire, stared at the folder. She didn't reach for it. She didn't deny anything. She just sat there with tears running down her face. There is no dying brother, Francis continued. There's no hospital. No medical bills. You made it all up because Jennifer told you exactly what would make me fall for you. A woman who was struggling but strong. A woman who cared about family. A woman who wanted nothing from me. Claire stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. She told me you were a monster, Claire said quietly. Jennifer, when she hired me, she said you were a narcissist who'd emotionally abused her for years. She said you used your money to control people. She said you deserved to lose everything you had. I never abused her, Francis said. Not once. I know, Claire said. She turned to face him. I figured that out after the first week. You're not a monster, Francis. You're just lonely and scared, just like me. So you kept taking the money. Yes, I kept taking the money. Because I'm broke and I haven't worked in 2 years. Because my rent is 3 months overdue and I was about to be evicted. Because I'm desperate and selfish and I thought I could just play a role and take the money and not feel anything. She walked back to the couch and picked up her purse. She pulled out the contract, the same one Marcus had found, and set it on the table. I was supposed to tell you tonight that I'm pregnant, Claire said. Jennifer told me to lie and say I was pregnant, so you'd marry me quickly. That was the plan. Get married fast, then divorce you within a year and take everything I could. Francis stared at the contract. But I can't do it, Claire said. I came here tonight, ready to lie to you again. But when I saw your face, when I saw this place and realized you've been lying to me too, I just couldn't. She walked to the door. For what it's worth, she said with her hand on the handle, I really did fall in love with you, not with your money, not with the character you were playing, with you, the real you. The man who talks about his daughter like she's the most important thing in the world. The man who's so afraid of being hurt that he's been testing everyone for 1.5 years. The man who's just as lonely as I am. She opened the door. Claire, Francis said. She stopped but didn't turn around. Is any of it true? Anything you told me? Claire was quiet for a moment. My parents really are dead. That part was true. And I really do love dinosaurs. When Emma was talking about her T-Rex collection, those were actually my favorite dinosaurs too. She looked back at him. Goodbye, Francis. The door closed behind her. Francis stood alone in his enormous apartment, surrounded by $50 million worth of things that suddenly felt completely worthless. Francis didn't sleep that night. He sat on his couch staring at the contract Claire had left behind. Jennifer's signature stared back at him. At 3 a.m, Francis called Marcus and told him to find out where Jennifer was staying. The next morning, Francis stood outside a luxury hotel downtown. Marcus had traced Jennifer to a suite on the 15th floor. She'd been living there for 3 months, apparently watching her plan unfold from a distance. Francis rode the elevator up and knocked on the door to room 1547. Jennifer answered in a silk robe, holding a cup of coffee. She looked exactly the same as the day she'd left him. Blonde hair, expensive makeup, cold blue eyes. When she saw Francis, she smiled. "Hello, darling," she said. "I wonder when you figured out." Francis pushed past her into the suite. It was massive and probably cost thousands of dollars a night. Jennifer had always loved spending money, especially when it was his. "You hired an actress to con me," Francis said. Jennifer sat down on the couch, completely calm. "I hired an actress to teach you a lesson. There's a difference." "What lesson?" "That you can't trust anyone. That everyone has a price. That love is just another transaction." She sipped her coffee. "I mean, that's what you believe anyway, right? That's why you've been running your little poverty tests. You think everyone is a gold digger. I just proved you right. Why do you even care?" Francis demanded. "You got your money. You got the divorce. Why come back to torture me?" Jennifer's smile faded. "Because you humiliated me. You made me sign a prenup that said if I cheated, I'd get nothing. Then you spent our entire marriage looking for evidence that I was cheating. You had me followed. You checked my phone. You questioned me about every man I talked to. You made me feel like a criminal in my own marriage. You were cheating," Francis said quietly. "I was lonely," Jennifer snapped. "You were so obsessed with your business and your money and protecting your fortune that you forgot you had a wife. So yes, I had an affair. And yes, I made sure you find out so I could leave. But the worst part, Francis, is that you never even fought for me. You just let me go and wrote me a check." She stood up and walked to the window. "So, I wanted you to feel what I felt. I wanted you to fall in love with someone who didn't love you back. I wanted you to feel used. And it worked. Claire told me how you looked at her, how you introduced her to Emma. You were falling, Francis. Finally, after 18 months of testing, you were actually falling for someone." Francis felt cold rage building in his chest. "You involved my daughter in this." "I involved everyone," Jennifer said. "That's how revenge works." Francis pulled out his phone and pressed play on a recording. Jennifer's voice filled the room talking about the plan, about making Francis fall completely in love before pulling the trigger. Jennifer's eyes went wide. "You recorded me?" "Claire recorded you," Francis said. "Last Tuesday at the cafe. She wore a wire. She recorded every coaching session you two had together." He pulled out another folder. "And Marcus found the offshore accounts, the payments, the contract, all of it. I have lawyers ready to file charges for fraud, conspiracy, and extortion. You'll spend the next 10 years in prison, and I'll make sure you never see Emma again." Jennifer's face went white. "Unless," Francis said. "Unless what?" "Unless you give Claire her money. All of it. Every dollar you promised her. And then you leave. You go back to wherever you came from, and you never contact me or Emma or Claire ever again. Why would you protect her?" Jennifer asked. "She was part of this." "Because she tried to stop it," Francis said. "Because she told me the truth instead of going through with your plan. Because, unlike you, she actually has a conscience." Jennifer stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. "You fell for her. You actually fell for her. Even knowing she was paid to seduce you, you still think there's something real there. You have 24 hours to leave the city, Jennifer." Francis walked to the door. As he opened it, Jennifer called after him. "You're going to lose, Francis. Maybe not this time, but eventually. Because you can't love someone without trusting them, and you'll never trust anyone again. Claire broke you just as much as I did." Francis closed the door without responding because he knew Jennifer was right. Even if Claire's feelings had become real, even if she'd genuinely fallen for him somewhere along the way, he would never be able to trust that. He would always wonder if it was part of performance. He would always question every smile, every laugh, every "I love you." Jennifer had won after all, not by taking his money, by taking his ability to believe in love. 3 days later, Francis stood outside Claire's apartment building. He'd spent those 3 days thinking about Jennifer's words, about whether any of it could be real, about whether he wanted to try. He knocked on Claire's door. She opened it wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. Her hair was in a messy ponytail. She had no makeup on. She looked exhausted. "Francis," she said, "what are you doing here? Can I come in?" Claire stepped aside. Her apartment was exactly what Francis expected. Small, shabby, nearly empty. There was a futon, a small TV on a milk crate, and a kitchen that was barely more than a hot plate and a mini fridge. This was real. Claire really was broke. "Jennifer left town," Francis said. "She transferred your money. All of it. It should be in your account now." Claire sat down on the futon. "I know. I saw it this morning. I've been staring at the number all day. What are you going to do with it?" "Pay my rent, I guess. Try to get my life back." She looked up at him. "Why did you make her pay me?" "I lied to you." "Because you stopped lying," Francis said. "And because you deserved it." "I don't deserve anything," Claire said. "I was literally paid to break your heart. I don't get to be the victim here." "Maybe not," Francis said. "But I keep thinking about what you said, about how it became real. And I keep wondering if that was true, or if it was just part of the act. Does it matter?" "It matters to me." Claire stood up and walked to a window. "When I was 19, I did a play in college. It was about a woman who pretended to be in love to save her family. Every night, I performed her story. I said lines about love and sacrifice, and the audience cried. But it was just acting." She turned to look at him. "But one night, something happened. I was in the middle of a big scene, and suddenly I felt it. Really felt it. The love, the guilt, the desperation. It wasn't acting anymore. It was real. And for the rest of the run, I couldn't separate myself from the character. I'd go home and cry because I felt like I'd really betrayed someone." "What's your point?" "My point is that sometimes acting becomes real. Sometimes you start out lying and end up telling the truth without meaning to." She walked toward him. "I was paid to fall in love with you, Francis. But somewhere between the diner and the fountain and the museum with Emma, I stopped acting. I stopped thinking about the money. I just felt." She stopped a few feet away from him. "But I also lied to you for 2 months. I invented a dying brother. I manipulated you. So even if my love is real now, I don't blame you if you can't forgive that." Francis looked at her, at the woman who'd paid for his dinner with her tip money, who'd played with Emma for hours without complaining, who'd cried when she talked about a brother who didn't exist but represented something true, the weight of caring for someone when you could barely take care of yourself. "I lied to you too," Francis said. "I tested you. I manipulated you. I pretended to be someone I wasn't. So maybe we're both guilty. Where does that leave us?" Francis thought about the last 5 years of his life. The paranoia, the loneliness, the tests that proved everyone wanted his money, but never proved that anyone could love him. He'd built walls so high that the only person who could climb them was someone who'd been literally trained to do it. "I don't know if what we had was real," Francis said, "but I'd like to find out. The right way this time. No tests, no lies, no games. Just two people trying to figure out if they can build something together." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Francis, I don't know if I can be the person you need." "I don't need you to be perfect," Francis said. "I just need you to be honest. Complete honesty from this moment forward. Can you do that?" Claire wiped her eyes. "Yes, I can do that." "Then let's start over. Hi, I'm Francis Harris. I'm a single dad with trust issues and more money than I know what to do with. I'm terrible at relationships, and I've spent the last year and a half pushing everyone away. But I'm trying to do better." Claire smiled through her tears. "Hi, I'm Claire Santos. I'm a broke actress who just took money to break someone's heart. I'm selfish and desperate, and I've made terrible choices. But I'm trying to do better too. Francis held out his hand. Claire took it. So what happens now? She asked. Now we see if two broken people can help each other heal, Francis said. Or if we just break each other worse. Those are terrible odds. Yeah, Francis said, but they're the best odds I've had in 5 years. He pulled her close. She put her head on his chest. They stood like that in her tiny apartment. Two people who'd lied to each other trying to figure out if truth could build something better than deception ever could. Outside, the city hummed with life. Jennifer was gone. The tests were over. The games had ended. All that was left was two damaged people and a choice about whether to try again. Francis didn't know if it would work. He didn't know if he'd ever fully trust Claire, or she'd ever fully forgive herself. He didn't know if love could survive being born from lies. But for the first time in years, Francis was willing to find out. And maybe that was enough. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person, Dot. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My dad said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. But I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show him that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. And here's what I need to know. Do you want part 2?